Hey everyone, welcome to FrontPageBets, the FPBcast. Back at you, Gerry, Ahern, Mike Szvetitz, and we're right around the corner from college football. Less than a month away. We're inside of August. College football starts at the last weekend of August, last Saturday. And Gerry, I don't know. I mean, I'm ready for football season, right? Like NFL season kind of, we got training camp. We talked last week about, some of our favorites to win the divisions, but college football has been always, covering college football for almost 20 years, being kind of growing up in it, is always something that's special, that first, kind of kickoff, even though it seems to get earlier. It's not fall anymore, still,
Right.
summertime and hot as crap outside. But, it's there's just something about college football kicking off. And at Front Page Bets, over the summer, last couple of weeks, we've been talking about the Power Five conferences, our favorites, the odds-on favorites, Heisman Trophy favorites, who's going to win the national championship. So we're going to break that all down for you here on this week's FPBcast. Gerry, let's start with just kind of overall national champion. We'll break down the Power Five, but the national champion favorite again is Alabama. They've won 6 national championships since 2009, since Nick Saban got there. They've, every single year the Crimson Tide is at the top of the list. Even though they lost to Georgia last year, they're still the favorites to win this year. Didn't lose as much as Georgia did in the NFL draft. And, we'll talk about Georgia, but returning Heisman Trophy winner, Bryce Young, Will Anderson Jr. at linebacker. He's even in the top 5 of the Heisman race now, the odds-on favorites going in that. We'll talk about him. But, Alabama, can anybody rival what Alabama's been doing, what Nick Saban's been doing? And really, what is their odds are plus 250 to win the national championship. Can anybody really compete with Alabama?
It's hard to believe that anybody will, just because of what's coming back, and particularly having a veteran quarterback and Young back. I think that's huge. Anderson on defense as the anchor is huge as well. But, if anybody's going to be, the dogs in the fight, I think you got to look at Ohio State for similar reasons, with CJ Stroud coming back at quarterback, kind of hungry after the stumble to Michigan in the big game, cost them a shot at the playoff last year, after it looked like they were going to just, crucify another team after they killed a very good Michigan State team last year. I think they'll be interesting to see what happens with Clemson after a stumble last year as well. Is their quarterback situation solidified? Can they contend? Can they get back in the playoff and/or, challenge Alabama? I wouldn't be surprised if they do. And then, maybe looking around a little bit more, real interesting to see what happens at USC with Lincoln Riley going there and bringing in some players for hire, so to speak, including his old quarterback, Caleb Williams from Norman. That's going to be interesting to watch. I don't think they're quite ready to contend yet. And conversely, or sort of parallelly, Oklahoma, with Brent Venables taking over that program with a lot of talent as well. It'll be interesting to see how they do, but I don't see either of those squads being in the hunt.
Yeah, I think it's Alabama's, like always, to lose. You mentioned Georgia, beat.
I actually didn't mention Georgia, but I should have.
Well, you should have mentioned Georgia. You said the dogs in the fight, so I was kind of giving that to you. But talk about Georgia. I think they lose 5 draft picks, first-round draft picks off that defense. They lose, I think, 11 players total to the NFL draft. So they lose a lot. Nation's best defense. They were able to score some points when it mattered. Obviously, Stetson Bennett at quarterback, probably the most underrated guy, and kind of deservingly so going into last year. Smaller kid, really kind of gritty, tough, but really separated himself at the end of the season last year, and especially in the Orange Bowl, to get into the national championship game. It's his team. They've got some offensive weapons, got some JUCO transfers, got some transfer portal folks. They've got probably the best tight end in the country. What are they going to be able to do on defense? They do have some returners back, but I think if anybody's going to challenge Alabama in the SEC, it's probably going to be Georgia, coming from the East, and we'll break down that conference here. But again, with the top quarterback, well, CJ Stroud is probably the top quarterback of Ohio State, but Bryce Young, been there, done that. And then, on the defensive end, Nick Saban's going to have a good defense. Offensively, you've got, Bill O'Brien back again, calling the offense for Alabama, his second year with Young. I think they just keep getting better, the way they prepare, the way they go. their schedule sets up for, their home games. They've got some Auburn at home. They've got some of the tougher games at home. They got Texas A&M at home. So if they can get through that gauntlet, they probably lose one regular season game. At least that's what I picked when we broke down Alabama's schedule. I got them losing actually Tennessee.
Yeah.
I know. I'm just waiting. Just waiting. But I do think Tennessee's going to be really good this year, but I think it's Alabama's to lose going in. But talking about the SEC, we'll start with that conference. We'll start with the nation's most powerful conference, Alabama, Georgia, the top two. East and West division teams probably odds on to play in the conference championship in Atlanta in December. Who can rival Alabama and Georgia? I think Tennessee's going to have a better team coming out of the East. Hendon Hooker playing quarterback. He actually had some great games last year. Josh Heupel's second year with the Volunteers. I think they're going to be better. I'm not saying they're going to beat Georgia. I'm not saying
they're not
in the SEC. But I'm just saying they could be a team that can compete, push those guys. I think from the West, you look at Texas A&M and what Jimbo Fisher's doing at College Station, #1 recruiting class, bringing in the transfer quarterback from LSU and Max Johnson. They beat Alabama last year, but it was at Texas A&M. They go to Tuscaloosa this year. So I think if anybody's going to push Alabama and Georgia, it could be Tennessee out of the East. Florida, LSU is going to be terrible. Arkansas is not going to be bad.
What about Ole Miss?
I can't. I don't know. I don't think Ole Miss has got. I think Lane Kiffin's got good game plans for individual games. I don't think they can sustain it. I think the West is going to be too tough at the top with Alabama, Texas A&M. Ole Miss might surprise some people in some games. I don't think they're going to be contending for the West to play, for the national or for the conference championship. That's what I see.
Tennessee, huh?
I don't know, and yeah, I think so. I think Tennessee's gonna. I think they've got a chance. They haven't beat Alabama in 16 games, 16 years, 16 seasons.
Right.
If any team can do it with the offense that they have this year, now they got to be able to stop people. That's the problem. They got to be able to stop something. They go to Rocky Top. I think if this is the year that Tennessee could win, it will be that game against Alabama. We'll see. That might be the only game they win on.
Hot take, as the kids say, sir.
Super hot here in August, beginning of August from Richmond, Virginia, coming in hot. Let's move on. We'll go to the second, I guess, best conference in the country, and that's the Big Ten. It's Ohio State, and then just close the kitchen. It's everything else is done.
Not so fast, my friend, as Mr. Corso would say. Michigan's good, and Michigan's got a lot coming back. They also did lose quite a bit of defensive talent in the draft, guys like Aiden Hutchinson, Dax Hill. But that being said, David Ajabo. That being said, there's an awful lot coming back, particularly on the offensive side. Particularly the thing to watch, I think, is that quarterback with J.J. McCarthy. Is he going to overtake Cade McNamara for the top job? Are they going to sort of platoon? How's that going to work? You got Jim Harbaugh, the quarterback whisperer, trying to figure that out when he's not campaigning for NFL jobs anyway. I guess he's done with that. But I mean, Michigan's good, and Michigan should not be taken lightly. Michigan State, who had a really surprising run last year, I think is a team that's going to take a step back. Mel Tucker got his $10 million a year. Unfortunately, he doesn't have his running back, who I think was the biggest key to making things happen for them last year, gone to the draft. I think their quarterback situation, Peyton Thorne is the incumbent, and we'll hang on to that. I think they'll be decent, but I don't see them anywhere near Ohio State's class. And then, on the other side, you've got Wisconsin, kind of always solid. Returning quarterback there who's got some things to prove. Don't see them challenging Ohio State. So it's basically Ohio State and Michigan, I think. And if you look much further into the conference, there'll be some decent teams, but not title contenders.
No, I think, Ohio State with the talent that they have, CJ Stroud, the depth in a talented receiver, running back. and Henderson, a kid actually from a couple miles down the road here where I'm at from Petersburg. I think, or Hopewell, you've got some guys that can play. They've been in the game. What they did in the Rose Bowl, Utah was just, I mean, both teams, it was just, it was probably one of the most exciting games. I wouldn't call it football. I would call it, soccer with pads on, where they were on. But
that's a shot.
It was an entertaining game. It was a very entertaining game. But I think it's Ohio State. There's to lose as well. I think, when you talk about, I think, if you go
if they don't, I mean, Ryan Day could be in some serious trouble if they don't.
You can't fall flat on your face against Michigan last year with that team, the second best offense in the nation. Or the top.
I still don't believe that game. I mean, I'm still not over that game. That was the most amazing thing of a lot of things that happened last season for me.
And Harbaugh finally had him ready to play. And that's why he was brought to Michigan, to reinstill some of that stuff, and not being able to beat Ohio State for years. And then, they have that game. And they could have, again, the only game that they would have wanted to win last year, and they did it. Now, you're right. If Ohio State falls again, now you're starting to, you don't lose to Michigan. You bet, especially don't lose to Michigan back-to-back years when you have that. So we'll see there. Let's talk about the Big 12. You mentioned Oklahoma. Brent Venables comes into Norman, the longtime defensive coordinator at Clemson, knows how to coach them up. He comes in. They just keep reloading at quarterback. You had Caleb Williams. He leaves. Well, first of all, you had Spencer Rattler. Last year, Caleb Williams comes off the bench, replaces him. Rattler goes to South Carolina. Williams goes to USC. And now you've got a quarterback that they brought in is just kind of almost the next man up, right? And so you look at what Oklahoma can do. Texas is in the mix as well. I think those teams are SEC teams in a couple of years, right? So can somebody challenge Oklahoma in the league this year to kind of maybe replace those two that are leaving? But and also Brent Venables, can he run a program? That's also the other question. He's been a great assistant, probably the top assistant in the country, not to be a head coach. Can he run a program, especially with all the pressure and all the eyes that are going to be on them in Oklahoma?
Yeah, well, and I think there's a lot of pressure in Texas on Sarkisian as well. I think they really underachieved last season with a lot of talent, and a guy like Bijan Robinson in the backfield, a better defense, as he said, sort of getting ready to hit the bricks to go to the SEC. But Texas should be there, man, right there with Oklahoma, and that, those two probably decided. Maybe Oklahoma State has something to say about some things. But boy, I think the two coaches in the country feeling the most pressure, in my humble opinion, are Steve Sarkisian and Ryan Day.
Yeah, Sarkisian. I mean, again, Texas, you don't go to Austin and have the time. 7-5 last year, I believe. Now, Robinson gets hurt I think after 9 or 10 games, he's hurt. So a lot of that offense went away. He was averaging almost 6 yards per carry, 12 all-purpose touchdowns. The kid can play. A Heisman favorite this year going in. I think he's fourth in the odds at 2,000 plus 2,000 behind Stroud and Bryce Young and Williams from USC. But Bijan Robinson is a guy, if he can stay healthy, can help turn this program around and help out Sarkisian, who came in with a lot of fanfare. Again, long history, people know about, at USC. He reinvents himself at Alabama, takes them, does very well there, goes to Texas, and we'll see what he can do there before they come back to the SEC at the end of next year. Big our Pac-12. We talked about.
Are they even going to play this season?
That's the other thing. Is there going to be anything left of the Big 12 and the Pac-12? Are they they should just join forces already and just call it, whatever they're going to call it.
It seems like it. I mean, the nuances of TV negotiations and all those things I get, but do you want to be around or do you not? And I mean, with the Pac-12, there's some, valuable commodities still outside of SC and UCLA. I mean, Oregon football has been tremendous for the past decade plus. And they'll be good again under a new coach in Lanning. And the cupboard was left pretty full when Cristobal bolted for Miami. That's a good, talented football team that could be a college football playoff contender.
Could be.
Breaks the right way. SC, mentioned earlier with, all these guys they're bringing in, the receiver from Pitt, the quarterback from Oklahoma, some defensive guys as well, new defensive coordinator, new system. The talent's there, and the talent by and large was there under Helton. But the problem is, how do you make all these new guys who don't even know like where the cafeteria is yet figure things out and work together? How do they gel? New system, new defensive system. That scares me a little bit about their chances. UCLA will be better under Chip Kelly. He's made considerable strides, I think, the past couple of years. He's got an incumbent veteran quarterback coming back as well. But I like Oregon in the Pac-12, and I like them a lot. Utah, I mean, obviously defending champion, shouldn't be ignored either, but I don't know. I think Oregon's back on top after a little bit of a disappointment last season.
I think USC has a lot of potential here, but how does Lincoln Riley, like you said, how do they all gel together? It's almost kind of like, this team of individuals that they pull together with a new coach first year. How do they all gel? That's going to be the question. But if they can gel in that conference, watch out. I think they could be kind of that team that really gets going with a lot of superstars or a lot of really good talent, but it's all about, about gelling and playing together in that system. So we'll see. And now we go to the ACC. Clemson's the favorite. They last year are very, it's kind of what, when you have arrived as a football program, when you get 10 wins and it's a disappointing season.
Right.
3 last year, first time since 2014 or the 2015 season, or the championship, that they didn't make the college football playoff. Every other year, Clemson's been in there. Dabo Swinney has led them, and they've just, they keep getting better.
Dabo hasn't quit yet over NIL.
Dabo can say and do whatever he wants pretty much now, because but if he has another season like they had last year, people are going to say, has he kind of jumped the shark? Dabo is that crazy like a fox coach. He says stuff, but his players love him. He gets them fired up and they show up. And now last year, Trevor Lawrence leaves, quarterback comes in and doesn't have the season that they want him to have.
Right.
But their defense kept them in so many games. Again, under Venables. Now he's gone. They got to break in 2 new coordinators. They've got a quarterback who has to produce this year. If not, they got a true freshman that's going to take his place in a heartbeat. But I think Clemson has got the schedule that sets up well. They play a lot of tough games in Death Valley, but I think there's some programs that are just below them that can play sleeper. I think Wake Forest won the Atlantic Division last year. They had 11 wins. They're going to be very, very good. And then you've got NC State is my sleeper in the ACC, returning 17 starters, including the quarterback, David Leary. He broke Phillip Rivers' single season record for touchdown passes to 35. Throw the football. They've got the veterans to come back. I like NC State to challenge Clemson there. Wake Forest will be good. Pitt, they got to replace, Kenny Pickett. They got a lot of things to replace. They were the champions in the conference last year. I don't think they can do it. I think Narduzzi, I'll leave that there. But Miami could be good too. Cristobal coming in. Their quarterback and Van Dyke is pretty good. How can they kind of round out some of that stuff there under a new coach? But I think it's Clemson, but NC State, keep an eye on NC State.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. I mean, I think it's Clemson and everybody. And I think if there's anyone out of the everybody that can do it, it's NC State. As you mentioned, so many guys coming back, including under center, and been pretty darn consistent the last couple of years. But Clemson is going to rebound, and Clemson is going to be right there at the end of the discussion. I truly believe that. I think the quarterback is going to mature and, feel more comfortable in the system and in the pocket and out of the pocket and in the huddle, every way you can. And certainly he's feeling some heat, and he's got somebody nipping at his heels a little bit too. If he doesn't come through, that switch will be made. But I don't think so. I think Clemson's going to be just fine, and I think they're going to be back in the playoff.
It's interesting to say when you talk about the ACC and it's Clemson, now you start throwing teams like Wake Forest and NC State,
Yeah, right.
Florida State, Miami. That conference has had just some, other than Clemson over the last 5-6 years, Florida State has just been, I don't know what happened to that program. Miami just has got to get its swagger back. So there's a lot of those, perennial, even Virginia Tech,
Right.
Justin Fuente comes in, they have a great first season, and then they've got a new coach. Virginia's got a new coach. So you kind of have your perennial powers in the ACC, no more except for Clemson. Could NC State, this is, if you're an NC State or a Wake, this is the year, this is the time where you've really got to make some inroads, because not only does that help you in the season with, getting some, that it helps you in recruiting. And that's what has been separating all of those teams all along, is the Jimmies and Joes, as you know.
For sure.
So Heisman Trophy race real quick. We talked about CJ Stroud plus 225. And right behind him at plus 350 in the odds is Bryce Young. He's the defending champ. He's the defending Heisman winner. There hasn't been a back-to-back or a two-time Heisman winner, only but once. Archie Griffin from Ohio State back in the early seasons. So Young is looking to do that. Caleb Williams, quarterback for USC, plus 700. And then you got Bijan Robinson plus 2,000, and Will Anderson Jr., the linebacker from Alabama, also at plus 2,000 according to DraftKings. Could be the first defensive player since Charles Woodson in 1997 to win the Heisman. I don't think.
Nope.
But if he has another season,
so you're saying there's a chance, kind of thing, it would have to be a season where there was no true standout. And when you look down the lineup of guys you just rattled off, CJ Stroud, top-notch NFL prospect, a guy who is really agitated after what happened last year that kind of kept them out of the title hunt. Bryce Young, pretty much next to impossible also to repeat there, but you got to figure he's poised in position for another, pretty solid season, if not spectacular. Caleb Williams in the spotlight at USC, all that press out on the West Coast, playing in some of those later games, so he's going to get a lot of attention on TV. Bijan Robinson, just a monster of a back that is going to carry Steve Sarkisian either to a longer stay in Austin or the door, and it's pretty much those are the two choices, I think. And then Anderson, tremendous player. You mentioned Woodson as the last guy who did it. It's so hard to do. It's just so hard to, if you're not a quarterback or a running back, to win the Heisman Trophy.
Yeah, again, I was a Heisman voter for about 10 years, and a lot of people say it's a popularity contest. I always tried to vote looking at the games, looking at the matchups, who was the best player and who made their team better, not necessarily the guy that just had all the gaudy stats, which does help, but who made their team better, who if you took them out of the lineup, the team would just, would fall apart. And all the ones on this list are those guys. And I don't think a defensive player, unless you're like Woodson, where you could have some interceptions and return some interceptions for touchdowns, you're a kick returner, you got to be flashy. Outside linebacker, you got to have a Reggie White type season to contend. Last year, he had 17.5 sacks and 34.5 tackles for loss. That's insane. If he can duplicate those numbers, he'll be in the conversation. Probably won't win, especially with Stroud, because, with the weapons that he has around, it's Stroud's to lose, in my opinion.
Well, and if there's not an Alabama running back that has huge numbers, if Young doesn't have, it's almost like if you're not Notre Dame, you don't win the Heisman Trophy unless your team is in the national championship discussion as one of the top one or two teams. And, his team will be there. That's the good news. The bad news is, his quarterback and his running backs and even his receivers in that offense are going to have a better shot of winning a Heisman, in my opinion, than he does.
And in 16 times since 2000, there's only been 16 times since 2000, a quarterback has won the Heisman Trophy. So it's been 2 running backs and a receiver who have won. Everybody else has been a quarterback. So it just goes to show you the top 3 on that list are quarterbacks, probably one of those, if not the top one, which is CJ Stroud, who would be my pick to win the Heisman. Here, less than 1 month before the season starts, college football coming at you. Front Page Bets will have it all here. Jared, thanks for joining us. Keep it here. NFL, college football, we got it all. Major League trade deadline. I'll have a story on that today. So keep it here at frontpagebets.com all week, all summer, all fall long. Thanks for joining us.